Hi, friends. Welcome back. So, we've got to talk about Scott Bessent. That's Trump's pick for Treasury. And essentially, he's going to replace Janet Yellen. I don't think I'll have any problems getting through the confirmation hearings. I mean, you never know with Trump's picks, but it appears this guy is qualified, which is very, very different than his other cabinet picks. I do want to go over some of the things that he said, though, just so you have a general sense of who this guy is. I'll just say he's a Trump loyalist, is what it seems like. And it's kind of interesting, though, is that he's how can I say, a chameleon in terms of politics. He did fundraisers in the past for Gore, for Clinton, and for Obama. And then also, too, now he's doing fundraisers for Trump. So, there's that. I think he maybe just plays both sides of the aisle. What's interesting, though, is that he says a lot of praising things for Trump in the recent days. What's interesting, though, is that Musk actually disagreed with the pick. Musk was saying a few days ago, my view is that Bessent is a business as usual choice. So Musk was against this pick, actually. So it shows that Musk may not necessarily getting his money's worth. I think he gave $200 million to the Trump. But it says here, whereas Howard Lutnick will actually enact change, business as usual is driving America bankrupt. So we need change one way or another. So again, Musk wanted another guy, Lutnick, but Trump with Bessent. Bessent has actually said this about Trump. He says, talking about what do you think about Trumpflation? That's maybe the word going forward, meaning that Trump's policies will cause inflation. He says, it's insanity, this idea that Trump is inflationary is absurd. We had the worst inflation in 40 years under Biden-Harris. Again, this is from him. Everything she is talking about is inflationary, but somehow there's going to be an equanimity of inflation under her. And I just wanted to read that to you because it really shows that he's fully in Trump's camp, which is interesting, though, because if you remember, most economists were saying that Trump's policies would be more inflationary than Harris. However, to be fair, both of the candidates' policies were inflationary, just Trump's was a little bit more. I do want to read a couple comments from our community because it's fun to hear some other people's voices. This has come from Panjak. Panjak says, America is going full oligarchy, not even trying to hide it. Another person writes, VRPGO says, the West Wing will rename the White House Shopping Network when Trump returns. So we'll see. I do think that is a funny name, the White House Shopping Network. More things that Bessent has said regarding Trump and Trump's policy. So one of the key things is that he is all about this 3-point economic plan. I think they call it the 3 arrows. Here's a quote. I might even advise him to campaign on 3 arrows. This is coming from Bessent. Also says here, well, I might advise him to campaign on 3 arrows. It would be 3% real economic growth. And how do you get that? Through deregulation, more U.S. energy production, slaying inflation, and forward guidance on competence for people to make investments so that private sector can take over from this bloated government spending. So as you can see, these are kind of the themes that you're going to be hearing going, into the future here. 3% real economic growth. They want deregulation, right? So this idea that we're going to remove any kind of rules, these kind of things, any kind of oversights, right? Get rid of regulations. More energy production, which also fits in what some of Trump says. So the basic idea of for them to fight inflation, they're going to say, okay, energy is a big problem of why things cost more money. If we just produce more of that, therefore your life will be better. One of the issues, though, I have with this stuff talking about, say, the inflation issue is it doesn't necessarily address housing, which I think is a big concern for many Americans out there. You could make the case, though, that energy could theoretically bring down your food costs, right? Because there's a lot of transportation costs with energy, so you could certainly make that case. The other thing, too, with the energy stuff is, remember, Trump gets a lot of money from oil companies, and that's a big part of the Republican Party. So there's always this push to, drill, baby, drill, that kind of thing. He also mentions, too, that, essentially this was his quote from Bessent, private sector can take over from this bloated government spending. So that actually aligns with sort of the Elon Musk kind of stuff, cut the government, make everything private. Someone was actually mentioning in the comments, I thought was interesting. It was, I think, a person that said, we have a couple people in the community. One said they worked for the VA, was one, and another person said they were a contractor for the VA. And then I guess when they do their billing, they have to fill out like 3 billing forms. And for if you're watching this, if you remember that, I thought that was really interesting to say. But basically, there is bureaucracy with all that stuff. But as people mentioned, though, is that many of this overspending could actually be with turning things private, right? Essentially, you're turning stuff, taxpayer dollars, into for-profit kind of ventures. So I understand from this point of view, it's easy to sell voters that privatize everything will make everything better. But I disagree on that stuff. But I just want to tell you that that's their solutions. Drilling more, essentially get rid of regulations and privatize everything, right? That's what they'll say. And also to cut government services. That's the other things. Bessent, again, this is Trump Treasury Secretary, also says, forward guidance on competence for people to make investments appear to be his way of saying that Biden's administration policies have discouraged investment. So Bessent's trying to make the case that under Biden, Wall Street didn't like investing, didn't like, doing IPOs or whatever. But under Trump, it's going to be free for all. We'll have all this more investing in Wall Street. We'll be happy. Obviously, let's be frank, obviously, Goldman Sachs, stuff like that, that's what they want. Be able to do any mergers, acquisitions, monopolies, anything that you can. Forget about regulations. And if you want to talk about Cathie Wood, she's sort of said stuff about this in the past of, hey, it's all about innovation, and if you allow small businesses and many companies to invest freely, get rid of regulations, it'll essentially push the growth forward. So these kind of people won't necessarily lie per se. They'll just be very optimistic on if you remove regulations, that you'll be able to grow to overcome your deficits and stuff like that, right? Because we're talking about here, the idea is that you cut taxes and that'll unleash business to outgrow your deficits. That's the basic plan of what they're saying here. Also too, and I would say that's what something like a Cathie Wood say, because she's kind of falls in this camp, hedge fund manager, and such. Bessent would also say here too, he would tell Trump to, quote, make public his desire to get the deficit down to 3%. That's of GDP, as a percentage of GDP. By the end of his term, he didn't get us to 6 or 7% deficit. They averaged 4% under him, so he did get it. So he could get it down to 3. So get it down to 3, right? So that's what we're trying to talk about here. So, but the way, again, you have to do that, though, is you'd have to get your growth up. And we're talking about deficit spending. Here's more what he says. Then 3 million more oil barrels flowing a day from U.S. energy production. So 3 is the popular number to keep talking about. Also says here, according to him, that one of the number one drivers of inflation expectations. So it's in the oil expenses is driving inflation. He also says, so that would be my 3-3-3, right? It could go into a proper easing cycle. So try to cut rates as much as you can. Again, that's what Bessent also says here. Well, that view, actually, here, go back here. It was just fantastic for the country, talking about Trump, when Trump was president before. Working wages went up, the capital investment went up, tax collection level never went down, according to him. So then when we get COVID, and I think we don't know, things were going very, very well. So I reject the view that it didn't work for the country. The absolute debt to GDP, I think, would have been going downward from 22 onward. So the basic gist of sort of what we're arguing about here is, because COVID is pretty frank, it was an anomaly, right? So that's what many people who defend Trump will say, well, we don't know the full extent of how Trump's economic plans would have gone, because COVID was this crazy thing that happened. And if we would have not had COVID, then Trump would have sent America to the moon, essentially, is it just of it. And it's hard to say. The perfect thing, I'll just be very frank. It's hard to say because COVID did happen, so we don't know. I will say this, though, is that when you ever talk to these kind of people, they're going to have a different point of view than your point of view. And it all depends on everyone's experience, right? It depends if you believe in the trickle down stuff, right? The idea that if you cut taxes to wealthy investor class, then suddenly people at the bottom will have benefits from that. The idea is that they'll have more innovation, create more jobs, these kind of things, and then eventually, you'll work for them. I'll be frank, and I know I kind of make jokes about this kind of stuff, but this is just our system in the USA. So if you do want to get ahead, you want to take ownership of said private companies, right? That's essentially what buying stock is. That's part of making it ahead in the USA. And if it does keep going this way, sure, you'd want to buy equities. On the negative point of view, though, is let's say, for example, that they do cut all these regulations, et cetera. And as it turns out, inflation is runaway. We're printing, way too much. We lowered rates way too much. Inflation hurts, and hates, I guess you could say, hurts the lower classes the most, and they really, really get hurt. I would make the case that, having a strong middle class and small businesses is the backbone of USA. And me personally, I don't like to see, big corporations take over everything and have all the rules written for, said corporations and that kind of stuff. But I completely understand from these people's point of view, if all your friends live in that world and they're all smiling and cheering and happy like that, then it seems like that would be the best way to go. It certainly could work. I mean, I'm not saying that, it's hard to say, but I will say this too. For any of these kind of economic things, never necessarily give all the credit to a president, and never necessarily blame all the bad things happening to a particular president. One of the things that is something that we don't talk enough about in the USA, there's just a slowdown. Many places around the world. We also have a couple different wars, one in Europe, also in the Middle East. We have a clear slowdown in China. We have population decline, right? So we're in a different era than we say were before. And so whenever because people always say this, well, Chris, look at the historical returns of the market. Stocks only go up. Sure, in the past that has certainly been the case. So I'm not against investing in it, and I think you should. But I also just want to temper your claims. So I give you a simple example. Lately in the markets, it seems like whenever bonds hit 4.5%, people are like, you know what? I'm just gonna take that guaranteed solid returns. I'm getting that, and you'll see that is sort of very attractive to investors. Because essentially, when you are putting your money in the market, you're betting on future returns, which no one knows exactly what's going to happen, year to year to year. We don't know. We just don't. And that's so the big part of investing is managing your risk that makes sense for you. If you have a long-term horizon, right? So then chances are you're better off putting stuff in the market that's at least has performed, the last couple of decades. But we've also had this crazy amount of really frank money printing. We're also in this inflationary thing, and when Trump coming in, which could really drive inflation up, right? So according to Bessent, he's like, no, we're gonna grow away out of it. I'm confident of that kind of stuff. I'm not. I have a different point of view on this stuff, but I'm also concede, it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future. I mean, I can't predict, if there's going to be another COVID situation. Who knows, right? I can't predict when the wars may or may not end in Europe or say in the Middle East. I can't predict that kind of thing. It's hard to know, that far in advance. Regarding the stuff that he's saying about deregulations, I have disagreements with the regulation stuff. I think overly cutting all the regulations. If you guys lived through 0809, that's what happens. You just give out too much money to too many people that shouldn't have it. You let the banks freewheeled whatever, and everyone just becomes over leveraged. So I think that is a major issue going forward. Whether or not the USA will keep growing. One of the things I was thinking about, this is going to be an interesting one going forward. If Trump cuts immigration, if that changes the projections on U.S. population peak and decline. The last, and I always mention this on channel because not many channels don't talk about it, but the last projections that I looked at, I think it's something like around 2070, something like that. So that would be, 50 years from now? So still a long ways off, but it is coming. Where the U.S. population will peak. It'll be something of that nature. It has a big factor on not just the markets, but everything, because the basic idea is just imagine if your population grows forever, there's always a reason why you'd want to build another house, just for example, or there's always a reason why you want to build another computer, another phone, because there's always going to be a new person to the market to buy said things. Now, it's certainly true that let's say our population is flat, and would I need to buy new products? And why am I talking about products? Is because remember, we're a consumer economy, and for order for your company to keep making money, people need to keep consuming your said products. You're always going to buy something, right? But one of the things I've noticed in say tech is that because of the way our technology goes, is like stuff lasts a long time these days. I always mention the phone one because it's something we can all relate to. My wife and I, we always talk about, are we going to get the this iPhone? So this cycle we're not going to get, and I was just asking her, do we want to get the next one? And she's like, well, maybe not, because, and this is how it is like as long as her battery works, there's no reason to get a new one. But the funny thing is though, is like Apple always finds a way to figure out to slow down your battery. They say they don't, and they're not supposed to, but you guys know, we always wonder like if they put something in the code that sort of drains more battery quickly to basically get you to buy a new phone. Because how it is you used to be able to replace the batteries and keep your phone running longer. I mention that is because it's not just phone, be it computer, TVs. Like if you buy a TV these days, your TV is going to run much better than it used to in the past, and it's like the new ones are really great. Same with cars. Cars last a lot longer. And so I'm saying if you have a slowing population, right? There's no growth there. If our products are lasting better, no growth there, like where are companies going to be able to, generate more profits? And so that's why theoretically you have to, quote, innovate and make new products for you to buy, be it your robots or whatever. But a lot of the stuff that these companies are selling people, I think is perfectly bogus. That's my opinion. Or they're sort of like things that could be a detriment to society, as what we're seeing today with that whole AI and social media stuff. So that's sort of where at the crossroads. And whether or not this whole crypto craze will catch on, that's something that I thought was kind of interesting, because Bessent, he said in earlier interviews, he was talking about, Trump's going to support the dollar, or Trump loves the dollar, etc. Just kind of odd, because Trump literally goes to a Bitcoin reserve conference and like hanging out with all these people who are like, hey, government should buy, Bitcoin, and it should be awesome. And they were talking about, deregulating. I think there was even a senator from, I want to say it's Wyoming or Montana. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but she was like really pushing for America to buy, it's like 1 million Bitcoin. It's like really that much. It's like this crazy amount of money, or Bitcoin, I guess you'd call it. But the reason why I mention that is because like when we talk about innovation, is crypto really innovation? And I know the crypto, bulls will say, oh yeah, of course it's innovation. But I think in my opinion, the real innovation is probably going to be, I actually do think alternative energy, get away from oil, that kind of stuff. But we may be a long ways off before we get into, sustainable energy kind of things. And you're also too voting in a party that's all about drill baby drill. So there's that, because I think there could be a lot of new jobs with changing the country into green energy, or where could jobs and growth be is converting over to mass transit and just other kind of things like that. But I'm a big believer in mass transit. But just sort of, this particular party, they're all about oil, that kind of stuff. And then you got Musk as a big donor. He wants you to sell you a bunch of cars. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. So where's the innovation going to be? Other things that possibly could be innovative, I'm talking about in general in terms of investing. Theoretically, if we ever find a cure to cancer, AIDS, there's certainly opportunities there. Now, in that situation, that would actually create a whole set of other problems to where people would live even longer. And so then we'd have to really recalculate how we're going to do our, Social Security, these kind of things, because already we have a problem that people are essentially living long. And it's not a problem in the sense of like, you should live longer. And I want you to live longer, but economically, the way our retirement system works, pension systems, etc., the numbers doesn't support it if we're not having the same amount of kids as we had in the past. So there's that. So I know we talk about a lot of different things. I just sharing some things on my mind as I read through this stuff. Like I said, whether or not you like Scott, it's debatable. He is gay, but I just got to mention that, which is fine. I frankly I don't care. That's why it's not like the headline for me. Gay, do the job. Gay, don't do the job. As long as you can do the job, no problem. The one thing I will say though is that he is qualified. He agrees along with Trump, and we'll see how how this whole thing ends up playing. And at least it's better than the other cabinet members that are frankly completely unqualified. So I don't think this guy would be in trouble getting through. So that's my thoughts. Just some general thoughts on the market. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you all in the next video.